NRI now returned to India, written and narrated by Amar Vyas.
Chapter 3. Look, Ma, I got wheels. I'm going to buy a car today, I declared over breakfast. Which car are you going to buy? Baba asked me. Probably a used car that I can drive while I'm in India. In a year's time, we can hire a driver to drive you guys around. Where do you plan to buy it from? I asked me. I don't know, I'll have to figure it out. In the US, there were options like Craigslist and then the local newspapers, but I used to prefer buying car from a dealership. After shortlisting a few cars that I liked, I would note down their vehicle identification number. Then, I would go to Carfax.com, look up the car's ownership and title histories, and choose the car that seemed the most reasonable. Payment was either by cash or a loan. The bank would issue the loan in a couple of days. By the time I had finished my narration, I could see that I was thoroughly confused. But we have nothing like this here in India, she said. I think you should talk to Lalit or Shashi. They bought their cars almost together last year. I was right. It was better to talk to someone who knew the lay of the land. And that someone was Shashi. I called him a couple of times, but as usual, he did not answer. That's when I decided to call Lalit. In India, the only car worth buying is a Maruti Suzuki. It is a good value for money, it has a great network of service centers and the spares are cheap. Plus, the cars have a good resale value. It is important for you because you are planning to sell the car next year. Sell the car next year. I had not thought of that at all. Fresh from the experience of selling my car in the United States, I was not keen to undergo the pain and the suffering all over again so soon. But then I recalled my commuting troubles over the past week and came back to my original decision. What do you drive, Lalit? I asked. A Maruti Swift. It's a good car, he replied. What about an Indica? It's a good car if you plan to operate a taxi service for a call center. Lalit had degraded my battle tank with his casual remark. What about a used car? I asked him. I would advise you against it. Title histories can be a problem and sellers usually do not keep maintenance and service records. Some cars may even have been involved in accidents that might have gone unreported. We do not have used car dealerships like the CarMax that you used to build. But hey, why don't you come over? There is a used car shop near my house. We could go and check it out after we have lunch together. Lalit had just moved into a shiny new apartment building in Karvenagar, which was not too far from where we lived. The building did not have a working elevator yet, nor did it have an access road. I wasn't even sure if the building's firefighting system or emergency lighting, if any, was working. I could not understand why a developer would hand over an incomplete building. Moreover, why would the municipality allow the people to start living in an under-construction building? And most importantly, why would people rush to live there? I hoped that Lalit would be able to enlighten me on this. The trouble was that he lived on the 7th floor. I need the exercise, I told myself as I started my climb. Climbing stairs is also a good way to build an appetite. The second reassurance I offered myself. The first flight of stairs was completed in no time. The second took very little time. By the time I reached the 3rd floor, I began to realize the downside of climbing stairs on a hot day. My shirt was soaked with sweat by now. By the time I reached the 4th floor, I was huffing, puffing, and panting. My legs had begun to ache and my back was hurting. To motivate myself, I imagined settling down comfortably on a chair near an air conditioner with a beer in one hand. The 5th and the 6th floors were behind me, and there was only one more floor to go. As the number of stairs reduced to 3, 2, and finally 1, I reached the 7th floor. 3 minutes and 10 seconds after I had started my climb, I rang the doorbell to Lalit's house. There was no response. Tired of waiting, I knocked on the door. The door opened slowly. Lalit appeared, finger on his lips, indicating that I should keep quiet. The electricity board has disconnected supply this morning because the builder has not paid the bill, he told me. What builder? And why hasn't he paid the bills? A builder is one who develops the building project. You should know, you come from the industry. Lalit, in my world, the developer prepares the plans, gets the money and the approvals, hires contractors to do the actual construction. And yes, he also markets and sells the project. A builder is a totally new term for me. But Lalit was not impressed. I began to imagine what a builder looked like. The image was of a short, dark, fat man clad in a short-sleeved safari suit. In one hand he would be carrying a leather pouch with a gold wristwatch adorning his thick, hairy wrist. One cell phone would bulge out of his front pocket and he would carry another phone in his free hand. A pair of sunglasses with a golden frame and green lenses would be resting on the bridge of his oily nose. In contrast, a typical build in the United States would be a tall, muscular person wearing a jeans and a t-shirt. He would be a balding person probably in his early 40s and someone who had been working on job sites since his teens. With advancing age, he had a bare belly. While the two contrasting images ran through my mind, a streak of salty sweat ran into and then out of my mouth. That's when I realized that I was hot and miserable and standing in the hallway of Lalit's house. "Hey, come and sit," said Lalit. The couch was comfortable and soft. Its red upholstery complemented my face very well, which had turned red due to the heat. "Beer hai kya?" I asked, finally sitting down. To me, it was a rhetorical question. Lalit always stacked beer in his fridge. "Nahi," he replied. "No beer?" Lalit's reply had stumped me. Imagine the disappointment of a die-hard cricket fan who has decided to skip work in order to watch an India-Pakistan match at home, only to witness Sachin Tendulkar get out on the very first ball. I kind of felt like that. "We are back in India, bhai. Beer ke liye special permission lagta hai," Lalit added. I vaguely recalled that there was a rule from the 1930s that required a person to obtain a permit in order to drink. It was one of the many legacies from the British era. "Where do we get this permission from?" I asked. "Home Ministry," Lalit replied with a smile. That's when I realized that Lata Vaini had put her foot down. "We can always go and get some beer from the store downstairs, the one near the petrol pump." The wine shop had existed for several years in that area. During my college days, my friends and I were its regular patrons. Our preferred drink used to be a chilled can of Kingfisher beer. We used to call it a KFC. The fast food chain was yet to enter India back then. It was the late 1990s when ATM kiosks, cell phones and fast food chains were a rarity and a can of chilled beer was a luxury. But today I was not that motivated that I would walk in the hot sun and trek up 7 flights of stairs just for some beer. Moreover, the beer from the store could not be put in the fridge to chill. Warm beer was hardly my type. "So, are you planning to get the beer?" Lalit asked. "No, water would be fine," I said, just as Lata Vaini appeared in the room. Seema Kaku, Lalit's mother and my late aunt, had insisted that her son should marry Lata. She used to say, "One should marry a fair woman, that way the children would be born fair." Unfortunately, she was not around when Lalit and Lata had a son, because ironically, Gopal was as dark as the god after whom he was named. Seema Kaku's theory had failed in the case of her own grandchild. But I was sure she would have an explanation for that. She would have said, "Oh, Gopal is dark because he was born around Amavasya." Apparently, children who are born during the dark phase of the moon are born darker than those who are born around the full moon night. I had often wondered whether her theories held ground only in India or whether there were more exceptions, Scandinavia for example. Lalit had hardly stayed at home while he was in the United States. Now he practically worked from home most of the time. He was a consultant for many of the breweries that were based in Aurangabad, which was only a few hours' drive from Pune. Lata was a religious person, even to the extent of being called orthodox. Since her return to India, she had started teaching Sanskrit at a neighborhood school. 16 years of marriage had added a boy and a girl to complete their small and happy family. As the TV advertisements used to say back in the day, theirs was a chota parivar, sukhi parivar. A small family is a happy family. I recalled Lalit's finger on the lips sequence and I asked him, "So why did you ask me to keep quiet when I entered?" "Ganga is not well." "Which means just the four of us for lunch? By the way, where's Gopal?" "He's away at his friend's place," Lataveni replied. "And I am sorry, there is no lunch. There is no gas to cook. With no electricity either, I cannot make anything." It was my turn to run out of gas. Lalit could have at least informed me, but for some strange reason he had become a penny pincher ever since his return to India. "A phone call costs 1 rupee and a SMS costs about the same," he had told me once. In his book, the price of inconvenience caused to others was much less than the worth of his rupee. "Hey, okay, let's leave for the car dealership then," I suggested. 5 minutes later, I had left Lalit's house with a piece of paper that bore the contact details of Royal Automobiles. Lalit had chosen to stay at home to answer the door, take phone calls and make afternoon tea provided the electricity was back. He resembled a neutered Labrador to me that day. He was warm and friendly and waiting for a command from his master, or in this case, Lataveni. Gone was the pit bull that I used to know. Shashi had become a diaper daddy and Lalit had been neutered. I had known them to be men's men when they were in the US. Somehow, India had changed them. I began to wonder what would happen to me if I stayed beyond a year. Shaking my head to shrug off these thoughts, I looked around. Kothrood had changed quite a lot over the past decade. What was once a narrow dirt road leading to a hamlet called Azadwadi had become a 4-lane road leading to an area called Azadnagar and the new subdivisions beyond. I thought it best to ask for directions, but not a single soul could be seen on the road. There were only stray dogs, an occasional cow, and a few birds. It was ironic. Pune was a city of 4 million people, and yet the street was deserted. I eventually reached Royal Automobiles around 2 p.m. and found that it was closed. "I do not deserve this," I said out aloud as I entered my house an hour later. I had to walk 5 kilometers in the heat to reach home. "How was your lunch?" I asked me. "Didn't have it," I replied. Ganga wasn't feeling well and they had no lights or gas. I wish Lalit had informed me. "That's the Desai family for you," Baba said as he entered the room. At 65, he needed a cane for support. His nearly toothless mouth was an unpleasant reminder of the ill effects of chewing tobacco. He had visited a local barber recently and his hair was cropped. But the most visible feature was his childlike smile on his face. This was one quality that I had inherited from him. The Desais were related from Baba's side and he always seemed to have a problem with them. As he settled down in a chair, he continued, "By the way, the phone was ringing every now and then. You were away, but it was nearly impossible to sleep." With those words, he handed me the phone. The cell phone was a relic compared to the BlackBerry I used to carry till recently. This 3-year-old LG phone was about 5 inches long and a couple of inches wide. Its screen occupied a third of its front face. The keypad was nothing remarkable. But the phone could do 3 things very well. It could receive incoming calls, make outgoing calls, and it had an alarm clock that could put any rooster to shame. For the past week, Baba had let me take it to work. On Sunday, he asked me to return his prized possession. I checked the missed calls list. Rajesh had called me twice. On my first day at work, I had asked Rajesh for his number. "I will give you a missed call, then you can add my number," he had said. But after seeing the phone I was carrying, he had remarked, "Amol yaar, what are you doing with this old phone? After all, we are in India, and a cell phone is not just a phone, it's a fashion statement. You are known by the phone that you carry, and for a US returned person like you, this old phone is a no-no. But let me save my number in your phone for now." Saying so, he pressed a few keys in the phone and handed it back to me, with the screen showing proudly, "Rajesh, work." Seeing my surprised look, he explained, "In India, people have more than one cell phone. I have 2 numbers and my wife has 2 as well. The best way to tell them apart is by saving them separately." He showed me a few entries from his address book. "Look," he said. What he really wanted me to see was that he was carrying an iPhone. I failed to understand why Rajesh had called me on a Sunday. After all, he had not called me yesterday when it had mattered. I chose to ignore him. Pangulal was the next in the list of callers. He had called me thrice. Pangulal was my best friend, my brother, my partner in crime, or rather, several crimes. "Why don't you answer your calls?" he asked as soon as he heard my voice. It was typical of Pangulal, cut and dry and to the point. "Left the phone at home," I replied. "Whatever. Namita and I are going to the Maruti showroom to test drive a car. You can meet us there at 6 p.m. "Great. But what's a showroom?" I asked. "In America, I believe they call it a car dealership. Just meet us at JM Road at 6. Pangulal had spent 3 years in Australia before he had fallen for a girl and followed her back to Bangalore. They had to elope in order to get married. I knew the story very well because I had arranged for the witnesses for their wedding. I had managed the show from Chicago and had booked the tickets for 2 of my friends from Chennai to Bangalore. For all my efforts, Pangulal had not expressed one word of gratitude. We did not believe in thanking each other. But the bigger issue was why Namita had chosen to marry Pangulal in the first place. She was a quiet, shy, level-headed person. And she was a lawyer who worked with one of the big 4 audit firms. Her father, Sanjay Garg, was a very successful realtor, and her mother was a well-known artist. Namita was the younger of the 2 girls. Her elder sister had married a musician. True to our tradition, Pangulal and I met at Surbhi, a nondescript eating joint on JM Road. This place had been our hangout during our college days. We ordered a standard menu, coffee followed by a masala dosa. Namita had a glass of lemon juice. She was still recovering from the excesses of their recent wedding. A second wedding at that. This was a traditional Indian wedding which was reluctantly arranged by her parents. As we worked on our dosas, Namita narrated the stories of their marriage. I was least interested in the irrelevant details. The color of the clothes that Pangulal was wearing or how the food was too spicy, for example. The only thing I missed was not being able to attend my best friend's wedding on both occasions. My parents had filled in for me instead. Namita stopped midway while she was narrating her stories and asked out of the blue, "By the way, what is the story behind the 10,000 rupees that your parents gave to us as a wedding gift?" "Namita," I said, "it is just one of those things that friends promise each other." Pangulal and I were cruising down Karve Road on his motorbike. Ahead of us, a wedding procession was led by a band and it had created the obligatory traffic jams. As Pangulal steered his motorbike through the circus, we noticed a sign that read, "The Joshi and Lele families welcome you." I was amused by the entire tamasha. "Why do people spend so much money on weddings?" I had asked Pangulal. "Don't know, but the rent for these halls are quite a bit," he had told. "How much is the rent anyways?" Pangulal smiled as I narrated this incident from our college days. I continued. Pangulal had replied then, "Bhai, I don't know, 10,000 rupees maybe?" That's when I had told him, "Don't worry, I will pay the 10,000 rupees when you get married." To which his reply was, "And I would be happy to return the favor." I saw that Pangulal, like me, had become nostalgic. Good old times those. 10,000 rupees was a tidy sum in 1996. And for a 20-year-old college kid back then, it was a lot of money. Those were the days when a cup of tea cost 2 rupees and chai and sutta ritual could be completed in less than a fiver. Namita's voice broke into my thoughts. "So you gave us 10,000 rupees for that reason. But the hall rental is much more these days. I think at least 10 times that amount. 20 if we talk about Mumbai or Delhi." "Namita, your point is valid. But what we had agreed was a fixed sum. There was no adjustment for inflation or addition of interest." Pangulal had become a smooth talker, if not a smart talker. "Too bad you didn't ask him for $10,000, Namita replied. "We had no plans of going abroad back then," Pangulal added. And I nodded in agreement. Namita said, "You had no plans, but both of you did go abroad. And Amol, now you say that you have no plans of staying back in India. But what if you do exactly that?" I nearly choked on the sambar that I was sipping. 20 minutes later, we were at the dealership. At best, it looked like a well-maintained car garage. A young lad clad in blue jeans, black shirt and a yellow tie came up to us. "Hello sir, can I help you?" he asked. He seemed the least interested. He seemed the least interested in saying anything more than that. He was probably the owner's son or nephew, or someone who was working there just for the money. "We're fine, thanks. Just here to see a Swift and test drive it," I told him. "I will be right back," he said, and a few minutes later he returned carrying a clipboard with a few sheets of paper in one hand and a pencil in the other. After a few minutes, he returned carrying a clipboard with a few sheets of paper in one hand and a pencil in the other. "I'm sorry, we only have one car today that you can test drive. All others are out." "What car is it?" Pangulal asked, as we rose to follow him into the parking area. "It's a Zen Estilo," he replied. Pangulal frowned and looked at me, indicating that this car was not worth considering. I ignored him. Our small party walked through the dimly lit hallway, past a row of cubicles, and finally down a short flight of stairs into an open area where the car was parked. It was purple in color, and its registration started with MH14. Pangulal burst out laughing. "You get the whole package. This is a must-buy," he said. Namita did not understand why he was so excited. The salesman sounded confused. "It is a good car," he said. I had only seen one car in the United States whose shape cannot be described in easy-to-understand terms. It was the Pontiac Aztek. These cars had such a poor demand that the car makers had no choice but to offer the steepest discounts possible. The Zen Estilo was a car in that league. If its shape was an absolute turn-off, so was its purple color. Moreover, it was too feminine for any self-respecting man. A biker chick earns catcalls and whistles, but a man watching a chick flick is often made fun of. The Zen Estilo was a chick flick of cars. But the main reason to stay away from the car was the dreaded MH14 registration. You see, there are two kinds of bad drivers in India. There are those who simply don't know how to drive, and then there are those whose vehicles have the MH14 registration. The latter hail from the Pimpri-Chinchwad area, the twin industrial towns that are located west of Pune. The drivers from this area have absolutely zero sense of driving. They honk their horns loudly on an empty street. They show a turn signal for the left side and turn right instead. And when they drive, they occupy nearly 2 lanes. The white stripes that separate the lanes are exactly in the middle of a car, just like an aircraft's nose wheel on a taxiway. These driving traits are universal, irrespective of the make or the vintage of the car, or the age or the gender of the driver. So now you can see why I was afraid of that registration. While in college, we had quite a few Premier Padminis, the Marutis, and the occasional Mercedes-Benz that drove on the streets of Pune that had MH14 number plates. Pangulal and I would ride our motorbikes with extra caution if we noticed a vehicle from that area. There was no way I was going to even sit in a purple car with a MH14 registration, let alone test drive it. "Thank you," I told the young lad and hinted to Namita and Pangulal that we should leave. "Wait, at least let us check the car out," Namita said. We both had no choice. She opened the door and took the driver's seat. "Step in," she said. Her dutiful husband complied. I had no choice but to try and fit myself in the incredibly cramped rear seats. The young lad sat next to me. Almost immediately, I stepped out. "What happened?" Pangulal asked. "This is not what I like. Hey, listen, why don't you folks carry on with this? I think there's still time. I will head over to the Tata Motors dealership on Tilak Road," I said. "Too bad you're going to miss out on the experience of a lifetime," Pangulal replied as we said our goodbyes. Fortunately, I found an auto rickshaw as soon as I stepped out. 10 minutes later, I was standing in front of Pandit Automotive, the dealership for Tata Motors. The guard at the gate asked me what I wanted. It seemed that businesses in Pune had a fetish for employing guards who invariably prevented customers from entering. As I entered the showroom, I walked into a large hall that displayed 6 or 7 vehicles. They had names such as Safari and Indigo, and there was an advertisement for something called as Decor Technology. It was supposed to be the best thing to have happened to cars since the launch of the Model T. And then there was a car called the Zeta. I began to wonder what had happened to the good old Indica. I asked a young girl who was sitting behind the reception counter, "I need to buy a car. Who can I talk to?" She looked at me and pointed to her left. I walked into the office area and asked a middle-aged lady who was struggling with the computer monitor that occupied more than half her desk. Namaskar. Can someone tell me how to buy a car here? The woman was irritated by my interruption. Please go to the reception desk. They will call someone. Ma'am, the lady at the reception asked me to come here. I'm a walk-in customer. The least that you can do is to have a salesman talk to me. By now, my patience was wearing out. The place was hot and stuffy. The air conditioning was turned off, probably because it was nearing closing time. I was to learn later that companies, both large and small, Indian and multinational, would spend millions of rupees in building fancy offices, only to realize that they were simply too expensive to maintain. As a result, they would look for ways to reduce the operating costs. Turning off the air conditioning was the most common way of doing so. The malaise of cost cutting would eventually spread to malls, theatres, restaurants, and even hospitals. The woman at the desk picked up the phone and spoke to someone. Kamalla Patwa. Kamal happened to be a youngish lad who was about 5 feet tall, and his shirt was stained with blue ink. Yes, he asked me. I began to wonder if he was a waiter in a Udupi restaurant in his previous job. I'm looking to buy an Indica. Which one, diesel or petrol? In the United States, I had always driven petrol or gasoline cars. Diesel cars were a no-no unless one drove one of the expensive European luxury cars. Petrol, I said. He looked at me with disbelief. Perhaps he thought that I was out of my mind. Over the next few days, several people would give me a similar look. There's a new Indica version, it's called Zeta, it's in petrol, Kamal said. Perfect, what are its features? It depends on the model. There is GLS, GLG and GLX. They all come up with a variety of features. The car you see here is a GLX. It is a top-end vehicle. I opened the door and sat in the driver's seat. The car was indeed designed for taxi drivers to ferry passengers from call centers. The console was basic. The dashboard was made of cheap plastic, and there was no music system. It felt strange sitting in the right-hand drive car after so many years. Does this car have disc brakes or ABS? My question startled Kamal. I'm sorry? His reaction told me all that I needed to know. Hey, what about airbags? The question left him startled again. Sorry, sir, there are no such features in this car. This was turning into a WYSIWYG moment. What you see is what you get. To me, disc brakes and airbags were basic safety features, but I decided to engage Kamal anyways. The more the questions I asked upfront, the better. It was a bitter lesson that I had learned from my job interview. So, what's the difference between a top-end model and the next best? Sir, you get power windows for all the 4 doors in the top-end model and there is an accessory kit. And what's the price difference between the two models? I probed further. About 25,000 rupees. 25,000 rupees for 2 power windows and an accessories kit? What if I buy the next best and get them installed separately? In that case, sir, it will cost you 8,000 rupees more. Kamal was getting uncomfortable by the minute. Okay, I would like that option. I would also like a test drive, I said. Sorry, sir, it is closing time. Can you come on Tuesday? We are closed on Mondays. Good old Pune, I said to myself. Businesses here remain closed on Mondays, afternoons, and of course holidays. They also open late around 10 in the morning and close by 6 p.m. It was 8 in the evening by the time I reached home. My day-long weekend was over in no time. As soon as I reached my office on Monday, I saw that Rajesh had made himself comfortable and he was busy looking at his laptop screen. Yaar, I called you so many times yesterday. You didn't pick up the phone. I left it at home, Rajesh. By the time I saw the missed calls, it was late in the night. That's okay. Acha, listen. Ganesh bought his car from the Tata dealership. I think he bought a Fiat. But he said that there is a salesman by the name of Prashant. When you go to the dealership, ask for Prashant. He will help you. Had I returned Rajesh's call yesterday, the trip to JM Road and my poor experience with the folks at Pandit Motors could have been avoided. Lesson learned. Always return calls in India. On Tuesday morning, I went to the dealership again, walked up to the front desk, and this time asked for Prashant. Prashant Kare? The girl behind the desk asked me. He is not here yet, but you may please sit down in the waiting area. The waiting area was a smallish room with bare walls that were painted in white, and there was a long sofa that was draped in dark blue faux leather. A news channel on the TV was informing people about an upcoming cricket tournament called the India Premier League. But cricket was not on my mind at that moment. A youngish lad walked in and said, Namaskar, I am Prashant. My colleague Ganesh referred you to me. He had bought a car from you. Yes, sir, he called me yesterday and told me that you would be here today. I was surprised. I had never met Ganesh till Saturday, and yet he had gone ahead and called Prashant. Can you come with me to the sales area, please? Which car would you like to buy? We have an Indigo and the latest Safari Decor. Both have great diesel engines. We offer attractive financing too. Thanks, but I'm looking for a small car, maybe an Indica with petrol engine. And I would be making the payment in full. Prashant was surprised. He had not expected me to say that I wanted to buy an Indica. But to me, that car was field tested, and I was not willing to pay an insane amount of money on a car that would be worth less than half its price very soon. Sir, there is a heavy rush for buying Indicas, but let me see what I can do. We are heavily backlogged because of the festival season, but if you make the payment today, maybe we can arrange for something. Please follow me. I walked into the sales area again and sat next to a small desk. To my right, another salesman was talking to a family of three, a husband, a wife, and their son who was probably 6 or 7 years old. I overheard the conversation, bits of it. It went something like this. The car will cost you rupees 5 lakhs. Taxes and duty will cost you extra. Are you planning to finance it? The salesman asked the husband. Yes, the husband replied. That is okay, sir. No issues. No issues was a term that I had heard the first time in India, and I was slowly getting used to it. It meant something like no problem. The salesman continued. We have financing facility available. Can you tell me where you work? I work with Wipro, the man replied. The next question took me by surprise. May I know your annual income? 3 lakh rupees a year, came the man's reply. The salesman smiled and called the office help. Raman, get 3 cups of coffee and a cold drink for a young customer. Something did not seem right to me. The man was willing to buy a car that cost 500,000 rupees when he only made 300,000 a year. And he was willing to take a loan for his purchase, for which the dealership was offering him coffee and a cold drink. On the other hand, I was willing to pay the full price for the car, but I was hardly getting any attention. Then it occurred to me. The family was being given a VIP service because the dealership stood to earn a commission on the loan. This commission was worth several times the margin they would earn by selling the car, and it meant big bonuses for the sales staff. My chain of thoughts was broken by Prashant's arrival. He walked up to me and said, I have brought the paperwork for the car. Shall we proceed? After nearly an hour, we had haggled over the price and agreed to the down payment amount. Several minutes later, the paperwork for the car was complete. I wrote a check for 40,000 rupees. The rest was to be paid on delivery. I wanted the car to be delivered on 6th of April, Gudi Padwa Day. It was one of the most auspicious days according to Baba, and it also marked the beginning of the new year in Maharashtra. I was not a big believer in muhurats or rituals, but gave in to this demand. After all, I had relocated for I and Baba's sake. April 6 was 3 weeks away, but Prashant was still non-committal. I cannot commit the date, but I will try. As I rose, I asked Prashant, by the way, what is the interest rate for financing? 15%. Would you like to finance your car? No, I was just checking. Thanks. 15% interest rate on a car loan? Including the interest, the family would be paying more than 2 times the price of the car over the next 5 years. A car whose value would depreciate the moment it left the dealership. The news of credit bubbles in the United States had probably not yet reached India. April 6th arrived and Baba woke me up early in the morning as he always did. We are getting the car today, he said, unable to conceal his excitement in his voice. It was a moment of joy for many reasons. For years, my parents had spent every major festival by themselves. Today, I was going to spend Gudi Padwa with them for the first time in 12 years. Lalit had suggested that he could drive the car home from the dealership, and I had agreed to this readily. Around noon, the 4 of us, I, Baba, Lalit and I, went to Pandit Motors in a couple of auto rickshaws. I had never seen such a mad rush at a dealership any time in my life. We were asked to wait in the sales area when we entered. We have a large number of deliveries. Over 100 people are taking their new cars home today, Shant said to me. I was one of the 100, and so was the family who had taken the loan to buy a car. Several hours later, I had the car keys in my hand. Lalit, took the driver's seat. Baba sat in the passenger's seat. I sat at the back. I and Baba were happy because their son would drive them around in Pune in a brand new car. Almost everyone from the mechanic who adjusted the seats to the guard at the exit wanted some money or bakshish from us. It was a legacy of the British era. In Pune, they called it chai pani, or money for the proverbial tea and water. Why is everyone asking for money? I asked Lalit. Let it be, he said. It's goodwill. I thought it was extortion. Half an hour later, the car was home. And before I could say, "Look, Ma, I got wheels," the car had to be sent to the body shop.
Thank you for listening to NRI Now Return to India by Amar Vyas. To learn more about Amar, you can visit his website amarvyas.in, or to check out this book on Amazon, visit Amar's Amazon author page. The links will be added in the show notes.